So we're here for mediation today. As you know, I am your mediator. And so the goal for today is kind of hash out what your points of contention are and find a middle ground and a solution that fits both of your interests for the best possible. A couple really important things. I know you guys already signed the mediation agreement, but just some things I want to reiterate are I am not your attorney. You are both represented by counsel, so I'm not going to give you advice. I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer here, and I'm not a judge, so I can't rule on this and say one party is right or one party is wrong, and I can't tell you how a judge would rule because that's not my job here. I'm a facilitator between the two of you to kind of come to a good agreement that fits your family best and most importantly your children best. So to begin, I think I'm going to let each of you do a little bit of a narrative and tell me kind of what your issues are, what you're expecting from this mediation, any questions you have for me, just kind of anything you want to say so we can figure out what exactly the problems are and then approach them as they come. So is there either one of you that wants to go first?
I will go first.
Okay, Lois, go ahead.
Okay. I want full custody of the kids. Larry has, ever since graduating law school 4 years ago, he rarely makes it home for dinner on time. He never makes it to the kids' activities on weekends. Our kids, Carrie and John, are 13 and 10, respectively. Carrie is very involved in school and has a lot of activities, but John does have really serious medical issues, and he unfortunately reads at a level 3 years younger than his age. So I'm a stay-at-home mom full-time, and I want to continue to be because, especially for John, and it's really important to me to be in their lives actively and available to them in their teens.
Okay. Okay, Larry?
Well, I feel like there are some issues that we need to talk about. I feel like we should have split custody of the children. I feel like Lois might not be in the best point in her life to take care of both of the children. I feel like if I could lessen the load a little bit here and there, maintain a relationship, then that would be great. And there are some other things like the property issue that I would like to talk about.
Okay, so what about, I don't know about the property issue. What is the property issue?
Well, until now I've been paying mostly the whole estate, portion, like living and whatnot. And the house is $250 or $250,000, and Lois seems to think that she can just take over the house and be with the kids because it's their family house where they grew up, and I would rather maybe sell the house and split the money both ways and go about it separately as opposed to me paying for the house and her living there with the children. And other than that, I feel like Lois might need a little bit time to herself to figure out her life. I feel like I might be a little more prepared to take care of the children's lives better than Lois.
Okay, what do you think should be done with the property?
I think that the kids are 13 and 10, very young, and that would be way too big of a transition for them. I would like to stay in the house, make the divorce as easy as possible, especially for John because of his developmental issues. And I spend the most time with the kids, but that's because I am a stay-at-home mom. John is never home. He usually only has 30 minutes a day with them. So I fear that if he had, I can't imagine him having them on nights. How would they get home from school? How would he cook them a dinner when he's not home? And I do have my life together. Another reason that I want to keep the house, in addition to it being the smoothest transition for the kids, is because when Larry and I got married and agreed to start a family, it was agreed upon that I would be the stay-at-home mom, and that gave Larry the space and the time to go back and pursue his law career, in which he is very successful now. Um, what was I supposed to say?
Did you work?
I am a teacher by trade, but I have been out of the, I haven't had a job since we had the kids.
She's been
especially
raising
once,
the kids. She's been raising the kids.
Yes,
yeah.
yes, especially once John was born, because John has had those medical issues since he was a baby. He only goes to the doctor like twice a year now, but growing up it was a lot more frequent. Also, my teaching certificate is not up to date. And who would want to hire a teacher who's been out of the workforce for 13 years? And I really want to be home with the kids and raising them in these really substantial years.
So you
So-
currently don't have any income?
I do not, no. But I spend all my time raising the kids, which is what we agreed upon when we agreed to have kids.
Okay.
That was the plan.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from what you guys, the issues you guys just brought up to me right now is that there's an issue of child support and parenting time. That there's an issue of the property being the house and how and if that would be divided. Then there's an issue of maintenance, whether or not Larry should support you after you guys split up.
Yes.
Does that sound like
Yes, and
most
Hitting
of
the nail on the
big,
head.
Yes.
big issues?
in
Yes.
addition to property, we also have a car that I use.
Yeah.
Larry does not drive it, he takes
I can take the train.
transit.
I can take the train, but that's not the point.
Okay.
But I do use the car often, especially for Carrie, because Carrie is very involved
Yeah.
after school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that the best approach to this is probably going to be to take each issue one at a time. Because these are a lot of substantial issues that are hit really close to home and that we should just take them one at a time. So I think we'll start with parenting time and the decisions for the children because they're, I would assume, the most important thing
Absolutely.
here. They're the center of this entire thing and why you guys would want to come to some sort of an agreement.
Absolutely.
So, talking more specifically about just parenting time, why don't each of you tell me what you would be looking for in an agreement for parenting time?
Well, I would like to play some active role in the children's lives. I feel like every other weekend and every Wednesday night would be adequate to take care of their needs and not disrupt them completely out of their normal habit. And that would, give Lois some time to get her things together and get back on her feet.
Okay, Lois?
I do not agree with that. I think that is way too much time. Larry oftentimes comes home without even saying hi or good night to the kids. He falls asleep within 30 minutes of being home. At family gatherings, he's never interacting with his in-laws, my parents, or any of the other family. I want sole parenting. Larry, he's essentially a stranger. The kids don't know who he is. I don't know how, when he's not around, what the kids would do. I don't know how they would get picked up from school. They don't know anything really about him. And I would be okay with maybe one weekend a month, but no more than that. He oftentimes says that he will come to soccer games on Saturdays, and he's missed endless soccer games.
Okay, I'm sorry, it's soccer. Can we get a little more fun activity for me to come to?
It's what Carrie likes to do,
Yeah.
but he oftentimes misses, even though he promises the kids and gets their hopes up. And I just don't want that negative energy around them.
Okay, so it sounds like, Larry, you want every other weekend and Wednesday nights.
Yes.
Lois, you're looking for something more like once a month.
Yes.
Um,
And oftentimes, he works late on Friday nights, and a lot of times he goes in the office on Saturdays, so I would even want the weekend to start when he's for sure going to be logged off and focused on the kids on weekends.
So would it start on a Saturday or a Friday? The weekend?
I would say Saturday unless you change your work schedule.
Saturday and Sunday? What time on Sunday would I give them back?
They go to bed at 8 p.m. So I would say 6 p.m.
6 p.m. sounds good. I'll think about it.
So Larry, you'd be willing to do one weekend?
Well, I'm agreeing to the Saturday and Sunday instead of the weekend starting on Friday to Sunday. I'll start thinking about Saturday to Sunday.
For
And once a
one
month.
weekend a month?
I want 2 weekends, but we'll talk about, hashing that out later. Yeah.
Well, that's the issue that we're on right now.
Okay.
So,
All right. Well, I feel like 2 weekends a month instead of 2 weekends and every Wednesday would be better. I'm seeing them 4 days less a month and just 4 days a month. It's 2 weekends, 2 weekends. And I feel like that would be better. I'm completely logged off and not checking my emails by Saturday at least. So I think that would be better for the kids and everyone involved. Yeah.
so what do you think about every other weekend doing Saturdays, Sundays, and Wednesdays?
I think that is way too much time. I think that he's not a good role model. He hasn't been around for 13 years.
Lois, you don't even know my life.
He, especially Wednesdays, with the kids' after-school activities, I don't know how he would be able to pick them up from school on a work night. So I do not agree with the Wednesdays at all.
Do you agree with Saturday and Sunday every other weekend?
No, I think that's too much time.
What if I take out the Wednesdays too? Then just Saturday and Sunday every other weekend. Too much still?
Yes.
Okay, so it sounds like Lois, you're frustrated with the amount of time that he spends working versus the
It's
amount
been a
of time
pattern
he
for
spends-
13 years.
versus the amount of time he spends with your family.
Yes.
And that worries you.
Yes. All of a sudden he is showing an effort, but he's had 13 years to show an effort.
And Larry, it sounds like you want to spend more time with your kids.
Absolutely.
So, because it seems like you guys aren't really able to find a common ground. Larry, why do you think that Lois would want to limit your time with the kids? If you had to put yourself in Lois's shoes and take her position of limiting your time, why would that be?
I would understand if she's looking at the previous years where I've been in school and, very busy with that and just other things that go along with my life. But now I'm out of school and I have a steady job where I can have separate times to be with my family, as opposed to when I was in school and I wouldn't be home very often and she would be primarily taking home the kids. That's changed now. I'm completely graduated. I'm ready to settle down and spend time with my children.
Okay.
Might I say he graduated 4 years ago, so it has been a pattern for the last 4 years of him very rarely getting home for dinner time, and we have sitting family dinners every night, and I would say he makes maybe one a week.
Your food is bland, Lois.
It has nothing to do with my food.
You're right.
Okay. Lois, if you were to make Larry's argument for him, you are now Larry and you want to spend more time with your kids. Someone's telling you can only spend one weekend a month with your kids. What would your argument be for Larry? Why would Larry want more time?
I think that he's just being stubborn right now and wants to deprive them of me, even though that's not in the kids' best interest.
It's not the case, Lois. I want to spend time with my children.
Okay, well, it sounds like we're kind of at a little bit of a standstill here and we're having a hard time seeing where the other person is coming from.
Yep.
So I think now might be a good time to take a little bit of a break. I'm going to talk to each one of you privately. We'll do Lois and I, and then we'll do Larry and I, and then we'll regroup after that and see if we can find a common ground for this issue. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to talk privately. Obviously Larry is not here, but anything that you say to me is going to be confidential unless you tell me that it's something you want me to share with Larry. Other than that, it'll just stay between you and I. Nobody else will hear this information. I just want to get a better feel of what your interests are behind the positions that you took in regards to the issues you guys have. And I just want to reiterate that I'm not your attorney, so I'm not going to give you advice. I'm not going to tell you how to handle your positions or anything like that. I'm just simply here to listen, but it will stay between you and I. So, I know that you want Larry to only have one weekend a month, so, I just wanna hear more about that and kind of, why you feel that way and what really you're afraid of if Larry gets more time.
Yeah, so he is just really not a good role model for the kids, especially for John. John needs constant attention, and I fear that his progress will digress if I go back to work, or if he is spending time at Larry's house and Larry isn't around, because he needs that constant attention. And we have gotten to a point where now we're only at 2 doctor's appointments a year, where it used to be multiple a month, and I really don't. It's really exciting and awesome to see John progressing like that, so I don't want this divorce process to alter him at all, because that's not fair for him. He's only 10. My parents, who are really involved in my life and always have been in the kids' lives, have never liked Larry, even from the beginning. Just don't think that he's a good role model for the kids at all, especially because as the years, more recent years, and the kids get older, he really does not spend time with them. So I really want to, I know he does love them, but he doesn't show it, so I don't want him to be completely out of the picture. But I really want to just have a hard limit on their time together,
Okay, and,
so I can keep it monitored and I know everything.
yeah, so it sounds like you're afraid mostly of your youngest child digressing into.
Absolutely.
Okay, and do you think that there is a way for you to feel more comfortable with him with Larry, something that Larry could do?
I think that limiting the hours a month would make me comfortable, because I would know exactly how long, how much time, and especially on weekends, knowing that he is away from the office and not distracted by things going on. That's why I really don't want weekdays. I don't see him being able to completely unplug and spend time with the kids on weekdays.
Okay, so if there were any changes that Larry made substantially in his workload, would that change your mind, or would there be anything that would make you feel more comfortable with your children spending more time with their dad?
If he had a lighter workload, yes, but I don't see that being possible.
Okay.
He's only 4 years in, and he's a lawyer, so
Yeah, those lawyers.
yeah.
So I know we're talking mostly about child support right now, but while you and I have an opportunity to just be alone and have this confidential conversation, I know that you said you want to keep the house and the car for property and that you're seeking maintenance. So is there anything pertaining to those 2 issues that you think is important for me to know as your mediator, that you would like to keep between you and I, or anything you want to bring up about those 2 issues specifically?
Nothing necessarily that we haven't already brought up, just that I do want to stay in the house for the kids' sake so that the transition is easiest, and that I could not financially afford it right now with not working, but I just don't see me going back to the office in the kids' best interests at all.
Okay, and so in the hypothetical situation that you're able to keep the home and you have substantial parenting time, I realize that you may be receiving child support, but how would you support your family? How do you plan on buying groceries? How do you plan on paying electricity bills? Things like that. What is your stance on how you are able to support yourself, or how are you able to support yourself, let's say, today and then again in the next 5 years? So we'll start with today. How do you plan, when you go home today, how do you support yourself?
Yes, so during this transition, my parents, the kids' grandparents, who are very involved, have offered to help us financially to ease the transition so that it's not detrimental to the kids. Down the road, I think that I would love Larry to support us on a
Regular.
like a regular basis, because as stated earlier, when we agreed to get married and start a family, it was that he would go back to work, go to law school and go to work and become a partner, and I would, so he would support the kids financially and I would support them emotionally and raise them
Okay.
in the home.
Have your parents put a timeline on how long they're willing to support you?
They have not.
Okay. How long do you think they would be willing to support you?
They love the kids, so I think they would be very willing, as long as we need, but I don't want to ask that of them.
Do you have any desire to go back to work, or if you don't, that's okay. If you do, when and
I love teaching and I would love to get my certification up to date and go back, but that would be after the kids go to college.
okay, so the youngest child would have to
Is
reach
10.
18.
Yeah, so at least 8 years.
Okay. And so your goal for maintenance is to just be supported by Larry until your kids are of legal age.
Yep.
Okay. And
And of course, once Carrie's 13, so in 3 years, she'll be old enough to work and get her license. So of course, I'll have them get jobs. But
okay. Is there anything else that you want to tell me while we have this opportunity?
I am seeing a new man.
Okay.
He is the exact role model that the kids need, and I know that my parents would agree with that, especially as they, from the get-go, never agreed with my dating Larry. And he wants to be active in their lives. He hasn't met them yet, but I know that he will be a very big role in their lives and a great role model.
Okay. Does Larry know about him?
No, and my parents do not either.
Okay. Do you have at this point
The kids
in
know.
your new relationship, do you have a timeline for when you would want to introduce him to Larry, the kids, or your parents?
I will not do it until the divorce is final.
Okay. And then would you introduce him to all of them or one at a time? What is your timeline for the kids? When would you introduce him to the kids?
Probably a couple months after the divorce is finalized.
Okay. And how about Larry?
The same. And I would introduce them to Larry first.
How do you think Larry would?
I don't think that he will take it too well, but I think that he will respect that I introduced him to him first,
Mm-hmm.
instead of the kids.
Okay. Okay. I don't think there's anything offhand that I need to know any further, but is there anything else you think is important?
No, just that I really feel that I need to be around, especially for John.
Okay. Okay. Well, like I said, all this is going to stay between the two of us. Is there anything you want me to share with Larry?
No.
Okay. So if at any point in the rest of this mediation you feel like something comes up that you want to tell me, that's going to stay between you and I, you can just let me know and we can have another private caucus. Otherwise, we're just going to try to see what agreements we can come to.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, Larry, so this is our chance to have a private conversation. Obviously, Lois is not here. You and I are gonna have, everything that is said in here is gonna remain confidential unless you tell me that it's something you want me to share with Lois. I just wanna reiterate that I am an impartial mediator, I'm not taking sides, and that I'm also not your attorney, so I'm not gonna give you advice or tell you that your opinion is right or wrong.
Okay.
So let's start, you said every other weekend and Wednesday nights for parenting time.
Correct, yeah.
Why?
Well, I feel like now that I'm graduated and I am in the workforce, I can separate. Now that she's brought upon the whole divorce thing, like this was completely new to me. So I feel like now that, she's put it out there that we can figure out a different schedule where I can focus on work more so during the week and focus on my children during the weekend, and that's why I would like to have them every other weekend. She doesn't want me to have them every other weekend Wednesdays. If I spend every weekend with them and every Wednesday with them, then I will start to spend less time at work, and that will take a pretty substantial hit onto my income. And I feel like if I'm gonna have to support for them, then I should be at least making as much money as I am now, than as opposed to having more time with them and getting paid less. So what I would like to focus on instead is being with them every other weekend instead of every weekend and with Wednesdays. And with this this guideline, then I would be able to focus on my 2 weekends with my kids and save all my work for the other days that I am working, as opposed to being with them. And I don't think that Lois understands that I can separate work and home life, and if I have the extra 2 weekends and 2 weekends with my kids, then I would be able to have business life and home life separate, but still maintaining in my children's lives.
Okay. So if you're afraid that if you're not at work enough, they will lower your salary.
Yeah, and I don't really want Lois to find that out, because I just would rather not. Rather not have her find out how much money I'm worth.
Okay, so I think I understand your standpoint for child support. You're trying to balance spending more time with your kids while maintaining your salary at work. The other issues that we've discussed are property and maintenance. Is there anything you want to talk to me about now while Lois isn't in the room? Anything that can remain confidential you think is important for me to know as your impartial mediator?
Alright, well, Lois has been babied her entire life. Okay, her parents just spoon feed her everything, and I go back to school and I work for what I've got. So I would rather not have to pay for everything with the house. Okay, I would rather sell the house and then split our both ways, split whatever we get from the house evenly, and then we go find our own living situations. But Lois hasn't been back to teaching in 10 years, so I don't know how she's going to work back into the flow of that, especially if she has the kids all the time.
Okay. And anything in regards to maintenance or paying to support her during the time that she is using to get her teaching certificate back?
You know what? I think that I would be willing to pay my last favor to Lois by paying her schooling and her recertifications and everything to get her back onto her feet, as long as I don't have to pay for her portion of all of this as well.
Okay.
So I would be willing to pay, yes, upfront 2 years for John and Carrie's schoolwork, living expenses, all of that, and as on top of Lois's certifications and all that, to get her going back in the right direction, instead of having to do this all on my own for the rest of John and Carrie's, childhood life.
Okay. Okay. Is there any other information you want to tell me right now that you think is important for me to know? Anything that you don't want, that you want to just stay between you and I before I bring Lois back in the room?
I just really wish that I would have had the kids every weekend, but it's okay. I feel like we'll be okay with every other weekend, and I would be able to work more at work and spend time with my kids as well.
Okay, so it sounds like ideally you'd want every weekend, but that you would be willing to negotiate every other weekend.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
She sprung this whole thing on me. I guess every other weekend would be okay. Ideally, I would have her every weekend, but, I guess every other would be okay.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, is there anything else before I bring Lois in the room?
No.
Okay. Okay, now that I've had an opportunity to talk with each one of you separately, I feel like I understand kind of the approaches that each one of you have and can facilitate better for you guys. Just as a quick reminder, I'm not your attorney. I'm not going to give you guys advice. I'm not going to tell you how a judge would rule, because I don't know how a judge would rule. I'm not a judge. I'm not your attorney. And I'm just an impartial mediator. I'm on no one's side. And I'm just here to help you guys find the agreement that works best for your family. So we're going to continue with child support, then we'll approach maintenance, finish up with property. I want you guys to know and understand that there's no right or wrong answer here. So I know that, that Larry has requested every other weekend and Wednesday nights. And Lois, you want just one weekend a month. But I want you guys to be flexible and realize that there's more than just option Lois and option Larry. That there are ways to be flexible and give a little here, take a little there, and that this is really your agreement. This is in your hands. And if you can come to an agreement here, it's something that you guys decided rather than a stranger who is a judge deciding for you guys. So I encourage you guys to take this opportunity and really take control of your lives and how your children are going to grow up and how they remember this time in their lives is all in your hands, and how you guys handle this, how you guys handle yourselves as co-parents, because husband and wife or ex-husband and ex-wife, you're going to be parents to both of your children forever. So
Right.
I just want to keep that in mind while you guys talk about this stuff. And so let's get back to it. Larry has requested every other weekend and weeknights. So my question to you, Lois, is why not?
I do not agree with the weeknight because I just don't see that being feasible from the pattern of the last 4 years of him getting home in time, let alone home in time to, or being able to leave work in time to pick up the kids after work.
Okay, so Larry, do you have a response for that?
As much as I hate to admit it, I think she's right.
Okay. Well, that's good. Okay, so maybe Wednesday nights, maybe weeknights aren't feasible for you.
Correct, right. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Larry has requested every other weekend, which would come to 2 weekends a month on average. And Lois, you said you want only 1 weekend a month. Would you be open to having 2 every other weekend?
Since Larry is willing enough to be honest about weekdays, I will give him every other weekend.
Okay. Okay, so I think as far as parenting time, it sounds like you guys have come to an agreement that would be best for your kids, allow your kids to kind of share the time between the two of you, and maybe we could do every other weekend. So the weekends, I remember from when we started, we said would start Saturday mornings and end Sunday evenings, a couple hours before bed.
Yes.
I agree with that.
Or
Yes.
even Saturday afternoon, given, unless you're not going to work those Saturdays.
It's okay. I would like to sleep in my Saturday mornings. So yeah, you can keep them until Saturday morning, and then I'll.
What time do we agree? 1 p.m.
I think noon would be good.
Noon? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
Noon and then 6, because you said
6
they go
p.m.
to sleep at
8.
On Sunday.
Okay.
Correct.
Sunday.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so we will do 12 p.m. on Saturdays to 6 p.m. on Sundays.
Yeah, every other.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, every other weekend. Okay. And then, so going along with the best interest of the children, because that's why we're all here, we need to support the children. So, let's talk about child support.
Great.
You know what? I'll go ahead and start it. Since Lois has been lenient enough to give me every other weekend, then I would like to pay for the children's medical and education expenses for the first 2 years from here on out. And then after those 2 years, we would be split payments maybe on both of them.
Split being 50-50, or what does split mean?
Split would be 50-50, but like once we get down the line to when the children are adults and they're going to college and whatnot, I will absolutely help pay for half of the public education, as long as it's not some sort of private institution or elaborate college. I feel like that would be absolutely manageable. Yes.
What do you think, Lois?
I'm agree that splitting the costs is fair, but I think that we should do it on a pro rata basis.
So you want to give me for all that I've got, right?
That is not
All
the
my
case.
all my income.
It
huh?
is that we agreed when we got married that we would, I would take care of the kids and that you would go to back to school.
Well, you're right,
Because you had
Lois.
that space to go back to school because I was taking care of the kids,
Yeah.
you were able to get higher education in your law degree
Okay.
and have such a great job now. And once you become partner,
All right.
I think that a pro rata basis just makes more sense.
You know what? I think she's right. I couldn't have done it without her, so let's go with a pro rata basis.
Okay.
But that's in 2 years from now after.
Absolutely. After I pay for the
So I
first
know
2
you
years.
said-
Yeah.
You
yeah.
said medical and educational
Yes.
expenses, but there are obviously expenses outside of that that children had, such as basic human needs, eating, bathing, toiletries,
Right. Right.
Activities,
gas
they're very,
to get
very
them
active.
to extracurricular
Right,
activities,
right,
gas,
right, yeah.
transportation to get them there. So,
Yeah.
what about those expenses?
Is there some sort of generic format that we can have for 2 children where they could, Lois could get a portion of my income to pay for all of the other extra, expenses?
There are statutory guidelines for child support you could follow,
Okay.
but those usually go until the child is 18. They're not 2 years and then everything's on a pro rata
right,
basis.
right, yeah.
So you could always modify those after, but those are kind of more like nuanced questions that you would ask your specific attorney and your approach
Okay.
for that. But there are statutory guidelines to child support that you guys could look at and seek the advice of your attorneys. But that's not really something that we would do here because I'm not going to advise either one of you on your options for child support.
Okay.
So, if you want, because it sounds like you guys are pretty agreeable or at least willing to negotiate pretty rationally about the idea of child support, we'll just move on from that.
Okay.
And you guys can talk to your attorneys and hopefully maybe work that out or come back for another session after you talk to your attorneys a little bit more about it.
Yeah.
And we can reapproach that because we at least have parenting time
Yes.
down for
Yes.
now.
And I
Right.
would like to talk about school because I don't want to deprive the kids of the best education possible.
Little Johnny. Yeah.
So we can talk about expenses. We'll come back to that after you guys talk to your attorneys, maybe a little bit more, get some guidance on the child support statute specifically and what they think your approach should be on that. So let's move on to the issue of maintenance, which would be support for Lois to maintain the lifestyle that y'all have maintained throughout the duration of your marriage. Lois, what are you looking for?
I am looking for support for us to maintain the way that we have been supporting the kids the past couple of years, which I stay at home, especially for Johnny. These next many years, I would like to do it through the teen years, which is 8 more years, once John goes to college at 18. And I would also like to stay in the house with the car
Okay.
as well.
So, leaving behind the issue of the car and the house specifically, talking about maintenance, and you're seeking for Larry to support you, how long would you want him to support you for? Would that be for a week, for the rest of your life, until the children are 18, or anything in between? How long does that look for you?
I would like to until the kids go to college because absolutely right now they are not old enough for me to go back to work. But I really want to be there for them and support them in their teen years and be completely available for them.
Okay.
And since Johnny is 10, that is 8 years from now.
Okay. And when you're talking about the support for yourself, what kind of support are you talking about? Are you talking about support for him to buy you groceries and pay your utilities? Or are you talking about support for him to get you back on your feet until you're teaching? Are you talking about support after you get a teaching job? Just what kind of things do you want him to be able to pay for, and what would your life look like?
Hopefully the smoothest transition as it is now, so supporting basic needs, groceries, the kids' finances towards the kids, and then once the kids go back to school, I would like to get my teacher's recertification.
Okay.
And
you would like Larry to pay
I would,
for
yeah,
that?
yeah.
Okay. Larry,
Yes.
what are your thoughts?
I'll give a little bit, okay? I feel like I could help support the children with groceries and all of that extra living
Okay,
expenses.
let's focus on just supporting Lois as your spouse,
Okay.
as your former spouse.
Mother
Yeah,
of children.
absolutely. Yeah, okay, I didn't forget about that, Lois. I feel like, I think that paying for, the 2 years of medical and educational expenses completely
Of hers?
of the children.
Okay, but we're talking about, okay, so just to focus.
Lois doesn't deserve all of my money.
Okay.
I would rather give that to my children than her.
Okay, well, right now we're talking strictly about spousal maintenance.
Okay.
So just the expenses of Lois.
Okay, so I'm paying for Lois to live her life, basically.
Which is the mother. Of your children.
Okay, alright, yeah, you can throw that in my face, but, alright, well,
Okay.
I feel like we had mentioned the generic guidelines, is there, some sort of ability to pay for a certain percentage of my children's lives on top of paying for Lois to get her research and all of this back in order to get her back in the workforce?
Okay, so just generally speaking, because again, I'm not your attorney, but there are statutory guidelines for maintenance, and you can talk to your attorneys about that. It's usually 30% of the payor's income, which
Yeah.
is Larry, minus 20% of the payee's income, which is you, Lois. That is usually statutory guidelines. The duration of the maintenance depends on the length of your marriage. So I'm not going to do that math for you. That's what your
Okay.
attorneys are for. It doesn't, a judge is allowed to not follow that. It's a guideline, so they don't have to do that. So I'm not telling you that that's what would happen if you went to court, or that's what not would happen if you go to, I have no idea. The idea here is for you guys to come to a number on your own without having a judge make that determination for you. So maintenance itself is completely separate. It's a totally separate issue from child support. Has nothing to do with how much either party is spending on supporting the child. It has nothing to do with where the child's going to school. It is strictly talking about one spouse supporting the other to the point where they can maintain the same lifestyle that the couple maintained while they were a married couple.
Okay.
So it's kind of the idea behind it is one spouse helping another spouse get on their feet. What that looks like for each couple is completely different. Sometimes that means maintenance for the rest of their lives until they die. And that's the only way that they can help the one spouse maintain it. For other spouses, it's paying for a year until they get a new job. For different spouses, these all look different. That's why the options are not A and B. The options are whatever you guys want to create. So whatever works for you guys. You have mentioned that at some point you want to go back to school. That creates, get your teaching recertification. That creates options in and of itself. When does she go back? How does she go back? Who's paying for her to go back? Is she gonna get a job? How much is she gonna get paid? That all affects maintenance.
Right.
As well as how much money do you make? How much money do you have that's disposable? Are you able to pay for her to go back to school? How quickly do you want her to go back to school? All these different things. Is she able to get a job? Those are all going to affect your maintenance, but also they brought in the options for you guys. You can give and take a little in different areas. What's most important to you? It sounds like Lois might be taking care of the kids, and what's most important to you sounds like you want her to be able to support herself as quickly as possible.
Right.
So finding a middle ground there, a little give and take on all these different 10 things I just pointed out to you will help you guys come to an agreement on what maintenance looks like for you. Otherwise, you can go to a judge who will say 30% minus 20% is this, or he might just say, I don't know what he's going to say. So it could be really anything.
We don't want that.
Right, so that at this point it's in your hands until you decide it's no longer in your hands and you give it to somebody else. So it sounds like at some point you want to go back to teaching, and at some point you would like her to go back to teaching.
Absolutely. Yes.
So what would be the soonest? What would be the soonest you would go back to school, and what would be the most you are willing to support her? So they're two.
I do not feel comfortable going back to teaching until the kids are out of the house.
Why?
I just want to make sure that I am available to them at all times, especially Carrie, who is extra involved and very busy, young woman, and John, who needs it for his medical reasons.
Yeah.
Larry?
Well, Lo, you know, there's going to be 8 hours where they're at school and you're going to be sitting at home, and you could be getting recertified or you could be teaching as well. So I feel like waiting 5 years, actually waiting 8 more years until John is out of school is a little long for me to be completely supporting the family. So I feel like maybe you should get the recertification process flowing within a couple of years, and then we can revisit the idea of how much I'm paying a month when you go back into school or go back into teaching, and you know, start, you know, bringing in different income and support for the family.
Larry, do you feel like there is a benefit to Lois spending her time at home?
Absolutely. I feel like she should be home with little Johnny boy. We know he needs it, and he loves his mom, so I understand that. But at the same time, you know, how long are her parents going to keep providing for us? You know, I don't want them to keep thinking of me as a scumbag because they keep paying for all of our children's needs. You know, when is she gonna start, you know, getting the ball rolling again is what I want to know.
Lois, do you think that there is a benefit to you going back to teaching?
I do, but not in the near future.
What are the benefits to you teaching?
It is then my income, and it is what my passion and what I love to do.
Okay. So it sounds like both of you, when I asked you guys both what the benefit to her staying home is and what the benefit to her going back to school is, I heard income on the one side, and on the other side I heard that especially your youngest child is being taken care of, getting the care that he needs. So there has to be, it sounds like you guys have a similar interest in that your children need to be taken care of, but you also, children need to be financially taken care of.
Right.
So is there a way to find a middle ground? You mentioned that she might not have a whole lot to do when the kids are in school.
Right.
And you mentioned that if you go back to teaching full-time, you'll be absent when the children need you there. You won't be able to pick them up from school and stuff like that.
Correct.
Is there an option in between?
I would be willing. I would be willing to get my recertification soon, so that way I can start substituting.
Okay.
That way it is kind of me starting to go back into the workforce, but not full blown.
I agree.
So that way the kids
Yeah.
can, it's an easy transition.
Absolutely.
Ease back into working. And then I would be willing to, instead of waiting until the kids are 18, be willing to wait till they're 16 when they have their own transportation
Okay.
to go back to teaching full time.
So then this is when Carrie is 16, and then she can start driving Johnny to school, or do you want Johnny to be 16 before we can start focusing on you going back into substitute teaching?
I would be willing to start substituting before Johnny is 16. I would
Okay.
be willing to
Okay.
do
How
that
soon?
Yeah.
in the foreseeable future. Well,
Yeah.
first things first, I need to get my recertification.
And how would the two of you get Lois recertified?
I said that I would absolutely take
You're so willing to-
take the bulk
Okay.
of the cost of her getting
The
her
bulk of
recertification.
it, all of it, or what percentage of it?
All of it, yeah.
Okay.
As long as it's not like $100,000, you know, is she gonna go back to school for this, or is she
Well-
just gonna get a certificate?
It's just a recertification.
Okay.
I already have my degree.
Okay, well, yes, then we can.
So you would be willing to pay 100% of it?
Absolutely.
And how soon would you be willing to go back to start substituting?
I would be willing to start. First, I need to get my certification.
Yes, which Larry said he would
yes,
be willing
yes.
to pay for 100% of the cost.
Absolutely, yes.
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 Depending on once the divorce is finalized, I would say about 6 months, give or take, because if our divorce is finalized over summer, I need to be there for the kids.
Right.
So
Okay. Alright.
I would say 6 months to a year after the divorce is finalized, I will begin substituting.
I think that's more than reasonable, yes.
Okay. And so you'd start substituting within about 6 months with Larry to pay your recertification. So in the interim between now and 6 months, would you be seeking support from any sort of support from Larry?
Yes.
And Larry, is that something you'd be willing to do?
Of course.
Okay.
Yes.
And how much do you think you would need per month?
I would be comfortable with $2,000 a month.
You know, I just think that 2,000 is more than what they would need.
They being just Lois. We're talking about just Lois.
Oh, we're talking about just Lois here.
Maintenance, just
Well,
Lois.
you know what? If we're just talking about Lois, then I think that's 2,000 is way too much, and I think that 1,500 would be more so reasonable.
Lois.
If this is in addition to child support conversation, that's a separate conversation, then 1,500 would suffice.
So,
Okay.
so you're saying that 1,500 on top of the child support that I would be paying for John
Yeah,
and
but we
Carrie?
haven't come to an agreement on child support, but it is two separate
We'll hash
payments.
that out later.
Yeah.
2 separate payments, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Is
Yeah.
that something
yeah.
you're?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so you guys would be agreeing to $1,500 per month for approximately 6 months. And then in the event that she isn't able to get a job or that she's struggling to get a job, would you be willing to pay that same amount until she gets at least some employment? Because substitute teaching isn't.
Yeah. Yeah. We know.
So
what
we need to come up
substitute
with a
teaching is.
duration for that amount.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I feel like as long as she's not taking forever and waiting until the kids are fully grown up to get her, full-time teaching job, then that would be okay. I feel like 6 months to get her back into substitute teaching, and then we take it from there would be a good opportunity. See how she feels about teaching a full-time class, and
So if you were to come to an agreement and you were going to pay $1,500 a month to Lois, how long would you say it's for?
You know what? I say that we could revisit that after she has her full-time job. So let's say 2 years.
When the
You
kids
know.
are.
But
able to
I do.
drive?
Yeah, the kids will be able to drive in 3 years, not 2.
3 years.
Well, Carrie will.
yeah,
So
right,
I would
right,
be comfortable exploring the option of working full-time
Okay.
once Carrie turns 16. but
Maybe
not
a
before that.
temporary maintenance for
Yeah.
3 years?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I would be good with that. Yes, for 3 years.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there anything, as far as maintenance goes, it sounds like y'all are in the agreement of $1,500 for 3 years and then possibly revisiting.
Yeah, then we'll definitely revisit that and maybe lower
Because
that
in
if she's
3
a
years,
full-time teacher.
you're anticipating seeking full-time.
Once Carrie has her license, I would be
Right.
comfortable beginning to.
So sometimes what we see when there's situations like this is that once Carrie turns 16, that Lois would keep a job diary that she gives to you for the full-time employment that she's seeking. You would keep paying the maintenance support until she gets a full-time
Okay.
job, so long as she's telling you all the jobs she's applying for and she's actively seeking full-time employment. Is that something you guys would be open to? And there's obviously variations of that and we can change it to fit you guys.
We can fine tweak it later, but I feel like that would absolutely be a good guideline.
Okay.
Yes.
And then, is that something you'd be?
It's a little micromanagey for me, but I will.
We'll revisit it later
Be-
down the line. Yeah.
But I will be okay with that.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Okay, so it sounds like we've come to somewhat of an agreement on maintenance, so let's talk about properties.
Ooh. Yeah.
So I know
Yeah, let's
y'all
talk about
mentioned that the two
Yeah.
biggest things are a home and a car.
Yep. Nice car. Nice home.
Okay, so, who's currently living in the home? Are both of you?
We both are with our family. Yes.
Okay, and so Larry, this seems to be something that you're not super comfortable with.
It's
so-
an issue. I mean, for the past week, I've been sleeping in a hotel while she sleeps in this, $250,000 house that I paid for. So I would like to figure that out instead of me having to pay for a totally new house, as opposed to, in addition to paying for her house as well, I would like to, in my perfect world, we would sell the house, split the money, go our separate ways with our house. But she thinks that John and Carrie need to live in the same house that they were raised in. So obviously we need to talk about that.
Okay.
That is correct, I do. Having the kids at home will ease the transition, especially for John, as he is at such a detrimental age. It's less distraction. It's a great school district. Both of our parents, both my parents and my in-laws, split the down payment on the house.
Yeah, they did.
So I want to stay in the house.
Okay.
That is a good point. Yeah. Yeah,
Is
they did split it.
is there a way that you can see feasible that would allow the children and Lois to stay in the house?
I feel like maybe I really don't want to pay for the house. I really don't. But maybe we could revisit the idea later on the road when she's a full-time teacher and has.
So
her
what would
own
it look
career.
like in the interim?
Between now and then? Well, I guess I would have to pay for her, you know? Spoon feed her even a little bit more. I don't want to do that, but I guess I will for the family. Our family.
Lois?
Yes. I mean,
Lois, would you ever be open to selling the house?
I'm not selling the house.
I paid for the house.
We purchased the house together.
Your parents helped my parents pay for the house. I've been paying every other payment on the house since then.
And I've been changing all of the diapers for our kids who live in that house. While you go back to school.
I've been out of school for 4 years.
Okay.
Now you remember that.
Okay, well, I think that this is obviously a point of contention and we're coming to the end
I'm not leaving
of
this
our
house.
allocated time.
Whatever, love.
So I think we made a lot of good progress here. We started today with 3 issues that we couldn't come to terms on, and we've come to an agreement on both of them, and I think you both seem like you're agreeable and happy with the agreements that we've come to on the first 2 issues.
Yes.
So I think the 3rd issue of the property is something that we can approach at our next session, and I'm confident that likewise for the other 2 issues, we are able to come to a point where we get down to the interest and find something that works for both of you, and most importantly, that works best for Carrie and John.
John and Carrie.
So at this point, I think we've made a really good progress, 2/3 of the way, and we will approach the issue of property at our next session.
That's great.
All right, sounds
Thank
good.
you.